Hello, my name is Taylor, and I was 12 years old when my world cracked open. On the outside, we looked like any other family in our little town. Dad with his iron shirts and briefcase, Mom juggling her part-time job at the store, my two older brothers, Justin, the golden boy at 16, and Matthew, the charming middle child at 14. And then there was me. Whenever relatives visited, they'd marvel at how Justin had Dad's sharp jawline or how Matthew inherited Mom's smile. But when their eyes landed on me, all I ever got was a polite nod and the phrase, "Oh, that's Taylor." Like I was the extra puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. I told myself it didn't matter, but deep down I knew it did. Lately, something was wrong. Mom's eyes looked swollen, as if tears were her new morning routine. Dad came home later and later, reeking of coffee and paper, locking himself in his room as though the rest of us didn't exist. They whispered at night in corners, their voices too low for my brothers to care, but never too low for me. Justin, absorbed in work shifts and endless texts, barely noticed. Matthew buried himself in basketball practice, sneakers pounding against the driveway until darkness swallowed him whole. They lived in their worlds. I lived in the shadows of theirs. Then came Sunday dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, the tick of the old wall clock. Dad was carving meat when suddenly he laid the knife down. His face looked pale, stretched tight. Mom reached for her glass of water, but her hand trembled. "Kids," Dad said. His voice wasn't his own. It was too formal, like he'd borrowed it from someone else. "Your mother and we need to tell you something important." My stomach plummeted. The air thickened until every breath stung. Mom blurted, "We've decided to get a divorce." The silence was so sharp, I swear I could hear the clock counting my heartbeats. Justin's fork froze midair. Matthew blinked, his mouth half open. "What about us?" Matthew asked, his voice breaking. "Don't worry," Mom reached for his hand. "We'll take care of you. Nothing will change for you boys." Relief washed over Justin's face. Dad nodded like a judge delivering a fair sentence, but their eyes flickered with something unspoken, something that didn't reach me. I didn't touch my food. I couldn't. A part of me knew the worst hadn't been said yet. The following weeks blurred into arguments muffled behind closed doors, the slamming of car doors, the sound of suitcases zipping. And then Thursday arrived, the day of the court hearing. The courtroom was colder than any winter I remembered. Wooden benches creaked beneath us. A judge loomed behind an enormous desk. Lawyers shuffled papers. The smell of polished wood mixed with my fear until I thought I might choke on it. Dad spoke first. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Your Honor, I am prepared to take one child, my eldest son, Justin. He's already working part-time and has shown responsibility. With my current financial situation, he's the most promising." The words knocked the air from my lungs. One child? Not children. Not family. One. Mom followed without hesitation. "I agree. I will take my middle son, Matthew. My income is limited, but he's nearly old enough to work and can help support us." Their words stung sharper than any slap. They spoke of my brothers like investments, assets that might yield profit. And then came the judge's question, the one that twisted my life forever. "And your youngest daughter, Taylor?" Both my parents shifted uncomfortably. Then Mom's voice, cold, final. "Taylor is only 12. She requires full support. We have decided neither of us can take her." Time fractured. My ears roared. The courtroom blurred. "You can't just get rid of me," I screamed, standing so fast the bench rattled. "You should have asked me what I wanted." Gasps rippled through the room. The judge slammed his gavel, his voice thunderous. "Young lady, order! The decision has been made." Two court officers gripped my arms. I twisted, searching for someone, anyone. Justin stared at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. Matthew sat frozen, confusion clouding his face. Mom dabbed at her tears, as though she were the victim. Dad whispered with his lawyer, calm as ever. Not one of them said goodbye. Not one of them called my name. As the officers dragged me away, I shouted, "You'll regret this! You'll regret throwing me away!" The doors slammed shut behind me, echoing like a verdict carved into stone. That was the moment I stopped being a daughter, a sister, a part of them. That was the moment I became nothing, at least to them. The shelter was not a home. It was a holding cell, dressed up with thin blankets and disinfectant. A gray building with narrow windows. Its hallways hummed with buzzing lights overhead, each flicker reminding me this place wasn't meant for comfort. When the officers dropped me off, a woman with silver hair and a clipboard greeted me. I'm Mrs. Peterson. Come along, Taylor. Her tone was soft but professional, too careful, as though she'd said the same lines to 100 abandoned kids before me. She led me to a dorm-style room with 3 other girls. Sarah, 15, had a sharp tongue but cried into her pillow at night. Maria, only 10, whispered prayers to a mom who never answered. Jessica, my age, had already mastered the art of emotional distance. The trick, Jessica told me in a hushed voice that first night, is never getting too comfortable. If you believe they'll keep you, you'll break when they don't. I thought about her words as I lay in my narrow bed, the springs digging into my back. My mind replayed the courtroom like a cruel movie loop. Mom's voice cold, Dad's steady tone, the gavel slamming as if sealing me into this fate. For the first week, I convinced myself they'd call. Maybe Mom would realize her mistake. Maybe Dad would knock on the shelter door. But each phone call I managed to make ended the same. Dad's voice was clipped, annoyed. Taylor, you need to stop holding on to the past. Think about your new life. Mom's voice was colder. When you're older, you'll understand why things had to happen this way. And then, silence. They stopped answering altogether. That's when my chest hardened into something solid. If they didn't want me, then fine. I didn't need them either. Mrs. Peterson promised they'd find me a loving foster family. She said the words like they belonged in a fairy tale, but I wasn't the princess type. I was the cursed child sent away to rot. The Johnsons were first. Their house looked perfect. Big yard, flower beds, even a swing set. But perfection can feel like a lie. At dinner, Mrs. Johnson smiled too wide. "So, Taylor, what are your hobbies?" she asked, her voice sugary, rehearsed. I stabbed at my peas, testing people. She laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. I made sure they saw my worst sides. I argued with the other kids, refused chores, slammed doors loud enough to rattle picture frames. I wanted to know how long it would take before they cracked. 2 weeks, that's all. The next families lasted 3 weeks, 10 days, a month at best. I perfected my strategy. Be difficult, be unlovable, and they'll show their true colors. Some tried patience. One mother even cried, pleading with me to give them a chance, but I couldn't. I wasn't sabotaging them. I was protecting myself. If I let them in, I'd only feel the sting when they decided I wasn't worth it. On my 13th birthday, I sat in the shelter's common room with a half-melted cake. Kids I barely knew sang softly, their voices blending with the hum of the lights. As the candles flickered, I whispered a vow. Never again will I beg to belong. If nobody wanted me, then I'd learn to want no one. That night, Mrs. Peterson found me staring out the window at the empty parking lot. "Taylor, you're a smart girl, but you're making this harder than it needs to be." "Maybe I don't want it to be easy," I muttered. "Don't you want a family who loves you?" she pressed gently. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "I had a family who was supposed to love me. Look how that turned out." She sighed, scribbled notes on her clipboard. I knew what she was writing. Difficult, resistant, behavioral problems. Good. Let the world know the truth. I wasn't some child eager to be saved. I was the girl who couldn't be thrown away again, because I'd already thrown away the need to be wanted. The shelter became familiar, almost safe. I knew where the spoons were kept, how to sneak seconds from the kitchen, which radiator made the least noise at night. The other kids stopped asking me when I'd get adopted. They knew. Like me, they could smell when someone was too broken to fix. But life is cruel that way. It always shifts just when you think you've figured out its rules. Because one rainy afternoon, Mrs. Peterson called me into her office. Her clipboard sat untouched. Instead, she folded her hands and said, "Taylor, I have some news. There are relatives of yours, on your mother's side. They want to talk to you." Relatives? My heart skipped. I didn't even know I had any beyond the ones who abandoned me. "They've heard about your situation," she continued. "They're interested in meeting you." I narrowed my eyes. Why now, after everything? She offered a small smile. "That's for you to find out. Would you be willing to talk to them on the phone?" Part of me wanted to say no, slam the door shut before hope could slip in. But another part, the smallest, most fragile part, wondered if maybe, just maybe, someone had finally remembered I existed. I shrugged, masking the tremor in my chest. "Fine, but don't expect me to like them." Mrs. Peterson didn't answer. She just dialed a number, the line ringing with a suspense that felt like it might never end. Mrs. Peterson handed me the receiver. My palms were damp, the plastic slick beneath my fingers. I pressed it to my ear, ready to hear disappointment in a new form. "Hello, this is Taylor," I said, voice sharp with caution. A warm laugh echoed back. "Taylor, it's so good to finally talk to you. I'm your Aunt Linda, and this is your Uncle Bob." Another voice joined in, deep, steady. "We've heard about what happened. We're so sorry you've had to go through all of this." The words caught me off guard. Sorry, no one had said that before. My parents had dismissed me, judges had labeled me, foster families had tolerated me. But apology? Genuine regret? That was new. I swallowed hard. "Why are you calling now? You've never been around before." A pause, then Aunt Linda's gentle tone. "You're right. We should have stepped in earlier. But when we learned what happened, we knew we couldn't stay away. We'd like you to live with us." I almost laughed. Live with them? As if strangers with kind voices could erase years of betrayal. Still, curiosity pricked at me. "Do you even have kids?" I challenged. "No," Uncle Bob admitted. "We always wanted a daughter. We thought our chance had passed, until now." His voice wasn't syrupy like foster parents trying too hard. It was steady, real. "We're not promising perfection," Aunt Linda added, "but we promise you won't be alone anymore." I pressed my lips together. Promises were dangerous. Promises meant disappointment. "Think about it, Taylor," Mrs. Peterson whispered, nudging me with her eyes. I muttered, "Fine, you can visit." But in my chest, a fragile ember flickered, the tiniest spark of hope. 2 days later, the shelter's visiting room was scrubbed and staged as if it could impress anyone. Plastic chairs, a table with a fake flower centerpiece. I sat there clutching my arms, pretending indifference. Then the door opened. Aunt Linda walked in first, short, with kind brown eyes that searched for me immediately. She didn't hesitate. She came straight over and wrapped her arms around me. Her embrace was warm, not forced, and for a moment I froze, unsure whether to push her away or melt into it. Behind her was Uncle Bob. Tall, with a beard peppered in gray, he wore a knitted sweater that looked handmade. His handshake was firm, but gentle. "It's good to finally meet you, Taylor." I studied them both, searching for cracks, for signs this was just another performance. But their eyes didn't dart away nervously. They held my gaze like I mattered. We sat at the table. They showed me pictures of their house, a cozy 2-story with a garden out front. "This would be your room," Aunt Linda said, sliding over a photo. Light blue walls, a big window, a bookshelf, a quilt spread across the bed. I bit the inside of my cheek. It was too perfect. "You already decorated a room for me? What if I say no?" Uncle Bob smiled faintly. "Then we'll repaint it. What matters is that it's yours, if you want it." I stared at the picture. For the first time, a room looked like it was waiting for me, not just a place to store me. "You don't know me," I whispered. "What if I'm a nightmare? Everyone else thought so." Aunt Linda reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "Then we'll face nightmares together. Family doesn't mean easy. It means staying." Her words cut through every defense I had built. Stay. No one had ever promised to stay. I blinked hard, fighting tears. I wanted to believe them, but belief was dangerous. "Fine," I muttered. "I'll try. But don't blame me when it falls apart." Uncle Bob nodded as though I'd given him a gift instead of a warning. "That's all we ask, for a chance." The day they came to pick me up, I packed my belongings into a black garbage bag. Not a suitcase, not a backpack. Just a bag that crinkled like trash. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Jessica walked me to the door. "Don't let them fool you," she whispered. "No one stays forever." I wanted to believe her. It was easier than risking hope. But as I stepped outside into the waiting car, I glanced back at the shelter. For the first time, I felt like I might be walking toward something instead of away from it. I climbed into the back seat. Aunt Linda looked at me in the rearview mirror and smiled. Not with pity, not with obligation, but with quiet pride. "Welcome home, Taylor," she said. My throat tightened. I didn't answer. Not yet. But deep inside, a voice whispered words I wasn't ready to say aloud. Maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. Life with Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob was nothing like the foster families. They didn't hover. They didn't pry. They didn't smile like actors reading lines from a script about being good parents. Instead, they simply lived, and quietly made space for me to live too. The first night in their house, I sat at the dinner table stiff as stone, waiting for the interrogation. "What are your hobbies? How are you feeling?" but all Uncle Bob said was, "Pass the salt, please." I blinked, unsure. Aunt Linda slid the shaker toward him, then asked me if I wanted more potatoes. That was it. No probing, no pressure, just dinner. It was unsettling. I'd been prepared to fight, to slam doors and spit venom, but without a battle to fight, all I had was silence. Over time, little things chipped at my armor. Aunt Linda leaving folded laundry outside my door. Uncle Bob fixing the loose hinge on my window without me asking. They never said, "We love you." Not yet. But they showed it in every small, steady act. School became easier, though I kept to myself. I didn't want friends. Friends left, just like family. My refuge came in the glow of a computer screen. Uncle Bob had an old desktop in the den, slow and wheezing, but it was a universe waiting to be unlocked. One rainy afternoon, curiosity led me to tinker with simple code. Words on a screen turned into patterns, patterns into small programs. For the first time, I felt a sense of control. The computer didn't abandon me. It responded, faithfully, line by line. Aunt Linda noticed. "You're good at this," she said, standing behind me as I showed her a puzzle I'd solved. "It's nothing," I muttered, embarrassed by her pride. "It's not nothing," she said firmly. "It's talent." The word clung to me. Talent. I wasn't a burden, a leftover, or a mistake. I had something that was mine. By 15, I was enrolled in programming classes at the community college. Sitting in a room full of adults made my stomach twist at first. But then I realized I was not just keeping up, I was excelling. The instructor praised me as a natural. For the first time, I wasn't the problem child. I was the prodigy. Competitions followed. At first small, then larger. Each time my name was called as the winner, I felt the cracks in my past begin to seal. Aunt Linda cried at my first victory. Uncle Bob snapped photo after photo, beaming like I'd won Olympic gold. At night, though, the old voices sometimes returned. Mom's cold dismissal, Dad's formal rejection, my brother's silence. Their absence was a shadow, reminding me that my worth had once been measured and found lacking. I tried not to care, and for a while I succeeded. High school blurred into college. Scholarships carried me forward, but so did determination. While other students wasted nights at parties, I spent hours in computer labs, building projects, chasing perfection in lines of code. By 19, I wasn't just winning competitions, I was making real money. Software I built sold online, downloads climbing by the day. I began to buy gifts for Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob. A new coffee maker, a leather tool set. They scolded me gently, refusing my money, but I pressed it into their hands anyway. "You saved me," I told them once, voice trembling more than I wanted. "This is the least I can do." Uncle Bob shook his head. "You don't owe us anything, Taylor. Families don't keep score." His words lodged deep in me, both healing and painful, because I remembered the family who had kept score, who had weighed me, measured me, and found me unworthy. By 20, everything shifted again. I won the U.S. Open Programming Championship. The prize was $100,000. My face was in magazines, my inbox overflowing with offers from tech giants. Reporters called me a prodigy, a genius. The night after my victory, we sat around the kitchen table, our Sunday ritual. Aunt Linda cooked roast chicken. Uncle Bob carved it carefully. They toasted me with sparkling cider, their eyes shining with pride. For a moment, I believed I had finally outrun the ghosts of my past. But then, the doorbell rang. It was late, unusual for visitors. Aunt Linda frowned, wiping her hands on a towel as she went to answer. I heard voices, familiar voices. "We're here to see Taylor," a woman said, her tone both casual and rehearsed. My blood turned cold. I stood up slowly, the room spinning. Stepping into the hallway, I saw them. My mother, my brother Matthew. Older, taller, but unmistakable. "Taylor," Mom said, as though she'd merely dropped by for tea. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you, all grown up." Matthew grinned, arms open. "We missed you so much." I froze at the sight of them in my doorway, memories colliding with the reality of their sudden return. 8 years of silence, 8 years of absence. And now, here they were, smiling like nothing had ever happened. And I knew in my bones, the storm I had feared was finally at my door. The sight of them, my mother and Matthew, standing on the doorstep after 8 silent years, made my stomach knot. Mom's hair was streaked with gray, but her smile was practiced, almost rehearsed. "Sweetheart, we've thought of you every day," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. Matthew stepped closer, taller now, broader. "We're so proud of you, Taylor. We missed you." His grin was wide, but his eyes darted past me, lingering on the framed trophies in the hallway. I crossed my arms. 8 years. Not a call, not a letter, but now that I've won something, you suddenly remember me? Mom's smile faltered. "Don't be cruel. We were busy, but we always carried you in our hearts." A laugh escaped me, sharp and humorless. "Busy? You were busy throwing me away like garbage." Aunt Linda appeared at my side, her hand light on my shoulder, steadying me. "I think you should leave," she told them firmly. Mom's eyes narrowed, her mask slipping. "We're her family. You don't get to keep her from us." I stepped forward, my voice low but slicing. "Family? You abandoned me in court. You chose convenience over me. Linda and Bob picked me up when you left me to rot. They're my family. You're just strangers with my DNA." Matthew's jaw tightened. "You can't stay mad forever." I stared at him. "Watch me." Aunt Linda shut the door, her touch warm on my arm. My chest heaved, but for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt unbreakable. The calls came after that. First Dad, his voice older, wearier. "Taylor, I heard about your success. I live in Germany now. You should come visit. We could start fresh." "Start fresh?" I echoed, bitter. "You made sure I didn't exist. I'm not interested." Then Justin's voice, softer, hesitant. "Hey, it's me. Maybe we could connect on social media. Just start slow." Slow? After 8 years of silence? I hung up without waiting for more. 2 years later, I stood on stage at my college graduation. My name echoed across the auditorium, applause thundering. Professors called me a shining example of resilience and brilliance. When I stepped up to the podium, the lights blinded me, but I spoke clearly. I want to thank my professors, my mentors, but most of all, I want to thank my parents, Linda and Bob, for believing in me when no one else did. Everything I've achieved is because of their love. The audience erupted. I spotted Aunt Linda wiping tears, Uncle Bob clapping until his palms must have stung. And then, like a shadow creeping into sunlight, I saw them. In the back row, my biological family, Mom, Dad, Justin, Matthew, sitting stiff, waiting to be acknowledged. After the ceremony, they approached, faces filled with entitlement. "We've always been proud of you," Dad said. "You should have thanked us, too. We gave you life." I turned slowly, meeting his gaze with steel. "If I'd thanked you, I would have had to tell everyone how you abandoned me in court. That's your legacy." Mom's lips trembled. "We did what was best for everyone. You need to understand." "I will never understand." My voice rose, trembling with rage I'd carried for years. "And I will never forgive." "Taylor, please," Justin tried, stepping forward. "We're family." I looked at him, at all of them, and felt nothing. No longing, no sorrow. Just a void where they once lived. "No," I said. "Linda and Bob are my family. You're strangers. Stay away from me." Their faces crumbled, but I didn't flinch. I turned and walked toward Linda and Bob, who were waiting with open arms. Now, years later, I sit at the same dinner table every Sunday. Roast chicken, laughter, the clink of glasses. Not silence, not whispers, not rejection. I have a career I love, a life I built, and parents who chose me when no one else would. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I think of my biological family. But not with sadness, not even with anger, with nothing. Because the truth is simple. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who stays when everyone else leaves. And Linda and Bob stayed, always.